This is Plant-Based Briefing. Does it make sense to serve beef ramen at COP26? By Sailesh Rao at climatehealers.org. And I'm your host, Mirian Erickson, and this is the 10-minute curated content plant-based podcast where I narrate articles with permission on a variety of topics related to plant-based and vegan living. And today's article is from Dr. Sailesh Rao of climatehealers.org, a nonprofit dedicated towards healing the Earth's climate. He's a published author and executive producer of a number of documentaries, including The Human Experiment, Cowspiracy, The Sustainability Secret, What the Health, A Prayer for Compassion, and one coming out November 11th called They're Trying to Kill Us. He's also published a number of positioning papers, most recently one called Animal Agriculture is the Leading Cause of Climate Change, where he establishes that animal agriculture is responsible for at least 87% of annual greenhouse gas emissions. You can find this paper and more information at climatehealers.org. Today's article talks about the climate meetings going on in Scotland next week called COP26. And I'll link the original post in the show notes as I always do. And from there, you'll see a link to an article in the Press and Journal where they're bragging about how, quote-unquote, sustainable the menu's going to be at COP26 because of things like using reusable glassware, and 80% of the food is going to be sourced from Scotland. But as you'll hear in the post, they completely ignore the cow in the room, which is animal agriculture. So now let's get to today's plant-based briefing. Does it make sense to serve beef ramen at COP26? By Sailesh Rao at climatehealers.org. The 77th Annual Golden Globe Awards served its guests 100% vegan food last year, even to its stars off camera. In explaining this decision, Lorenzo Soria, president of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, stated to the press, "Over the holidays, we took time to reflect on the last year and began thinking about the new year and the decade ahead. The climate crisis is impossible to ignore, and after speaking with our peers and friends in the community, we felt challenged to do better. The decision to serve an entirely plant-based meal was embraced by our partners at the Beverly Hilton and represents a small step in response to a big problem." On the other side of the Atlantic, the BAFTA Awards served vegan food to attendees in 2020 as well. Dame Pippa Harris, the deputy chair of the British Academy of Film and Television Arts, BAFTA, said, "Like everyone, we are increasingly concerned about the impact of climate change. It just feels like we can no longer do nothing. It's just not acceptable." If only the Conference of the Parties, COP, to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, were half as serious about addressing climate change as the Hollywood Foreign Press Association and the British Academy of Film and Television Arts, then the climate may actually be healed, and the world may be a better place for all life to thrive. But we have to help them grow a spine first. Next week in Glasgow will be the 26th meeting of the Conference of Parties, COP26. If the past 25 meetings and the published menu and eateries for COP26 are any indication, our political leaders are planning to do a lot of posturing for the cameras, while they secretly divvy out the loot from destroying the planet to their corporate puppet masters. Not this time. Addressing animal agriculture is foundational to any credible solution to the climate crisis, not to mention the biodiversity crisis, the desertification crisis, the obesity crisis, the diabetes crisis, you name it. Therefore, we will draw a big, fat, juicy red target on the cafeterias that serve disease-promoting, planet-destroying beef ramen, fish and chips, etc. at COP26 in Glasgow, and put our bodies on the line to make sure that no one eats these horrific foods, especially since there are plenty of vegan options available as well. The era of studiously ignoring the cow in the room is over. It is time for our political leaders to not only acknowledge the cow in the room, but to actively address her concerns. On behalf of all the animals, the cow will be at COP26. In fact, they won't be able to miss her. Please stay tuned for our daily podcast from COP26 at cowintheroom.org, which will go live on Sunday, October 31st. Let the climate healing begin. You just listened to Does It Make Sense to Serve Beef Ramen at COP26 by Sailesh Rao at climatehealers.org. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson. And I have to say, the ridiculousness of politicians and the media completely ignoring animal agriculture's impact on climate change is exhausting. And it reminds me of Greta Thunberg and her famous blah, blah, blah when she talks about the politicians doing this very same stuff. I'll put a link in the show notes to a great video of her and her blah, blah, blah. It's awesome. And Dr. Sailesh Rao is going to be at COP26. And do check out cowintheroom.org starting Sunday. I think there's going to be some great updates for us. I'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. I'll also put a link in the show notes to a new book called Food is Climate, a response to Al Gore, Bill Gates, Paul Hawken, and the conventional narrative on climate change. It's by Glenn Mercer, and he explains clearly and concisely how and why animal agriculture is the #1 contributor to climate change. The book is a great read. It's only 59 pages and then has 65 climate-friendly, healthy vegan recipes at the end, some by celebrity chefs. It's also really interesting to read about Sailesh's history with Al Gore as well. So if you do read this book, please leave a review on Amazon to help it get more visibility. So please share this episode. It would be great to get this message out to people about the greenwashing going on at COP26. And it would be great to get more people to follow cowintheroom.org as well. Thanks for listening.